voting or to the election of a provost. I don't think that's right.
It's a really interesting reflection, that, and I'm doing a parallel bit of work in the Scottish Parliament. It's a bit of work which predates the pandemic, but recently I've been asking people about the importance of the building and the sort of the balance between doing things remotely and doing things in the Parliament building itself. And definitely the members are saying it's really important that we get back into the chamber, and there's something qualitatively different about that. And your reflection there about the council chamber and committee rooms, there is, the Scottish Parliament's a newer building, but nonetheless it was very carefully designed in terms of its symbolism, and the architecture expressing certain democratic values about openness and transparency in the gathering place, in the same way that over 100 years ago councils were making deliberate choices about the sort of grandeur of the chamber and what that was speaking to in terms of value. Your reflection seems to me to be absolutely spot on in terms of it's almost like the sacredness of the space, isn't it, which speaks to the importance of the decisions that were taken on behalf of the public, and therefore the kind of symbolism or the performative piece of that is important.
Yeah, I think that in local government, a lot of the buildings were, our council building, the UN building in South Lanarkshire, but it's still an enormous council chamber. Yes. There is an informality about I don't by any means revere these sort of institutions. That's not what it's about to me. I don't really like these sort of cultures and traditions that can become quite sort of self-regarding. But my point is, when you are on matters of importance, when you are there to represent the people you elect, I think being present in the meeting is frankly one of the basics. But when it comes to demonstrating how respect for the decisions that you're taking and the people you represent, as I say, you wouldn't after this. There will be an online. I'm perfectly comfortable with an online element continuing. I just think that, as I say, you wouldn't zoom into a wedding and you wouldn't zoom into a funeral if you didn't have to. You would rather go.
So so for you, it isn't really the building or the chamber or anything like that. It's you could meet in a gym hall. It's the fact that it's not the building. It's the fact that you're coming together physically and taking the time out to do that matters.
Well, yeah. I think for those. Yeah. For those occasions, as I say, much of the work can be done online anyway. But that's special. That's the bit that you're really elected to do, and that's where the public can see it. That's the other thing. That's where the public can see what you're doing on their behalf.
Have you got time for a couple more questions, Councillor Fagan? I know we only budget for half an hour, so if you need to fly off, that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, got a bit of time. Yeah.
All right, fantastic. Thanks very much, because this is a really interesting conversation. What about the extent to which the public have been able to be involved in council processes over the last period of time? And it's not to suggest that there was some golden age pre-pandemic where there was loads of members of the public coming along to meetings and taking part and all that. But is there an issue in terms of the current ways of doing things, in terms of the extent to which the public can be involved in decisions in the meeting process and represent themselves, or come along and observe and so on?
I think that there is an issue in terms of the council's obligations. So the council, I'm thinking particularly about planning and sort of licensing and issues like that. Like right now on Zoom, people couldn't be brought into the not Zoom, on Teams rather, couldn't be brought into the Teams conversation. They could view it. They could view a live stream, and we're only just testing and piloting live streaming of the meetings, which is something that again the council should have been doing anyway, but the pandemic's brought to a head. But the public, I have to say, the level of public engagement with me as a councillor in terms of inquiries through social media or through my email, I don't really get any letters anymore, phone calls. I have to say I've not really noticed any drop off with that. That if anything, there's been an increase. More people have been getting in touch just because of the nature of what's happened over the past few months. So in that sense, the public engagement kind of continued. There wasn't a massive amount of public engagement in terms of people actually attending galleries to watch council meetings. That usually depended on the agenda, whether it was, usually it's controversial planning applications, I'll be honest, that attract an audience. So yes, there is an issue there that we do have obligations for the public to be able to see democracy being done. And I think we have a paper coming to our executive committee on Wednesday, which is updating us all on how that's progressing. But I think I've had one email about it. I haven't really had any real concern from the public about the fact that the meetings were not, they couldn't be part of meetings in that sense.
Thank you. The final question, I'm interested in your views on this. It's a slightly sort of wider angle one, because we've talked a lot about the processes and the systems and the implications of all of that. During the pandemic, to what extent do you think local government had a place of influence in terms of the management of the pandemic, the communication of issues, and so on, or to what extent was that more done by central government? So did it feel as though the local council was involved in discussions and decisions and was able to exert influence on behalf of local people into these sort of national decisions and processes during the pandemic, or did it feel as if local government or your own council was a bit more marginalised in that? I suppose it speaks to this really old issue about central-local relations and the balance of influence between these two parties.
I think there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that people have been much more switched on and have been consuming much more media that relates to the pandemic, whether it's the First Minister's press conference or Facebook support groups that have really have been springing up all over the country and have actually become ways of, I think originally ways of providing mutual aid, but have actually become sort of conversation, a place for conversation or a place to share information about rules, public health guidance, how public services are coping or reopening or whatever it might be. I had experience of that it has touched every possible aspect of life. Actually, there was a bus service in my ward that was withdrawn right in the summer. I set up an online petition, put it in social media, and I think within days had about 2,000 signatures calling for the bus service to be reinstated. And an SPT stepped in and the service got reinstated. But that spread not through print media or local newspaper, that spread word of mouth on social media. So I think where are people getting their news? I think they're centrally they are absolutely consuming it from national media and central government. Locally, they are using social media, and there has been social media has helped organise communities actually, but it's helped share a lot of information about what's happening locally. And I think people are finding their own trusted sources of information locally as well. I know there's obviously concern about fake news, but I think people are finding community groups, respected people, community leaders, and they're actually going there for a bit of information and advice and updates on the rules. And there's been a huge amount of time, and this is where I think there's been an issue more with local government, which is probably more what your question is about. Central government will make an announcement, but actually that announcement takes time for public services to implement or to adjust to. So, for example, when central government announced or clarified, as they did, that it was possible to play golf, immediately I was inundated with requests from golfers saying, why can't I go golfing in South Lanarkshire golf courses? And the reason is that actually it takes a bit of time to make sure that the council's got the right staff and not people being furloughed, to make sure that the council's satisfied that there is social distancing in the workplaces, all the rest of it, the back office is working. So I did find that local government was getting a bit of criticism just because of how quick things were moving. And local government people were moving a mile a minute to try and keep up